Doctors discover something hidden in a woman who had been in coma for 15 years. During her normal morning checkup, a nurse walked to the room of a patient who had been in coma for more than 10 years. The patient became abruptly motionless, and the nurse was startled by the strange noises she began to make. She screamed in terror as the nurse removed the sheet that was covering her. She was unable to accept what she was witnessing. As soon as the nurse started to examine her, she saw that something wasn't quite right with her physique. Maria was a beautiful young woman. When Maria was just 6 years old, 15 years ago, she was found unconscious on a city sidewalk and was taken to the hospital. The famous medical personnel in the capital area affectionately referred to her as Maria. After nearly a month had gone without anybody being able to explain the girl's origins, a modest family from a distant town eventually arrived to seek for the girl. The two elderly people were shocked to learn of their daughter's illness and were told they would need to pay a sizable sum of money if they wanted to keep her alive. The elderly had no chance of obtaining even a small piece of the considerable cash they were looking for, therefore they were compelled to issue the order to disconnect the youngster who was their only child. When they learned this, the doctors and nurses were devastated since many of them had become close to the adorable young girl and had made the decision to donate money to help pay for Maria's bills until she eventually awoke. Andrea was one of the most experienced hospital employees and the nurse who had grown closest to her. In the fervent hope that one day she would be awake, she claimed to feel like her second mother and spend hours a day amusing and guiding her. One day, Andrea was crossing the street to the hospital when she was hit by a vehicle. She thus had 3 trying months in bed. Her children took care of her and drove her to another city once she was discharged from the hospital. Though she fully recovered, she was concerned that her companions wouldn't care for Maria as well as she did. Finally, Andrea was permitted to resume her job. She saw her darling Maria on her first day of school a year later. When I walked into her room, she was beaming with glee and looked exactly like she usually did, but there was something very off about her face. She then began to groan in an odd way, startling the nurse so much that she noticed an odd protrusion in the center of her torso. Andrea screamed angrily as the sheet hit the floor and hurried to summon the doctors. The young child was delivered via a challenging process in a seemingly miraculous act. Despite her low weight and poor condition, the newborn was given a high chance of survival, according to the medical report. Later, when it became obvious that someone had physically abused Maria by taking advantage of her defenseless situation, Andrea did not hesitate to notify the police. Because they were scared of the impending dispute, the directors gave the order to disconnect her. After learning of this, the nurse raced to the unfortunate girl's room while carrying the infant in her arms to beg her to wake up. As the medical professionals arrived to disconnect Maria in the final effort to get her to wake up, Andrea put the newborn on her rigid body. She opened her eyes as soon as she felt the warmth of the baby and heard her cry, surprising everyone. Maria woke up to find she was now a mother to a small daughter after spending 15 years cut off from the outer world. In addition to being a difficult to understand woman, Maria was also incredibly confused. She was told by Andrea that she would take care of her and their baby, whom they named Esperanza. After comprehensive DNA testing, it was discovered that Esperanza's father was none other than a renowned physician who made the greatest donation to keep her alive in the hospital. He sought to get the legislation repealed by using his power. But the nasty guy was found guilty and sentenced to jail because of the nurse's tenacious pursuit of justice and the support of hundreds of other people who were horrified by such brutality. Now Maria and Esperanza live with Andrea and her children, who have served as her greatest sources of inspiration and have welcomed Maria and Esperanza as members of their family. They happily share her sweetness and beauty.